come. It's always most hard to find yourself live. And you know you subscribe to yourself, but you still can't find you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Anka, Tina. Thank you all for joining. So I thought we would come back today and recreate that Halloween. It's a scrapbook layout, but I'm going to make it into a card. And then what I'm going to do is I will do a YouTube video next week. And I'm going to do it as a scrapbook page because I think this would be a really fun scrapbook page. So I do kind of have a little bit of instruction on sort of what I think this looks like, but I'm going to wing it a little bit like I usually do. I will tell you, I did do this a little bit ahead of time. I did do a little bit of fussy cutting for the Raven. Also, I figured I'd do this today since it's Purple Friday. Sorry for all of you other Ravens or non-Ravens fans, but anyway. So I did stamp him and cut him out ahead of time, but you could totally omit that. Also, if you don't like fussy cutting, you might have a brother scan and cut. I don't have that, but I think it's probably a great investment. So what I was told is that the colors that they used to make this were gray granite, smoky slate, blackberry bliss, memento ink. I also brought in VersaFine because this gives a really blackness to it. Versamark as well because we're going to do a little heat embossing. I grabbed some blends. I have I don't know why I have dark basic black, but I'm going to see. Dark basic black. I have dark and light purple posy. I have dark and light blackberry bliss. You probably could also bring in some Highland Heather because that's no, not Highland Heather, Gorgeous Grape, because that's a pretty dark purple as well. And that's Rich Razzleberry. I grabbed the wrong one. Do we not have, maybe we don't have Gorgeous Grape. Maybe we only have Highland Heather. I don't think we have Gorgeous Grape. Yep, now that I think about it. We need Gorgeous Grape because I like that color. I also have sponges and sponge daubers because I don't know which one I'm going to need. I have my black shimmer embossing powder. As you can hear, the heat gun is heating up in the background. And they say that this works on Whisper White cardstock. So we're going to see what we come up with. I also have handy to add after the fact. This is going to need to dry. I have some shimmery crystal effects. I have a couple little pieces of the Halloween Bash DSP that kind of look like they're underneath. So we're going to see what's going on and make something of it. Thank you all very much for stopping by today. So I am going to put this on a base of basic black. So I have a cardstock that's cut 4 1/4 by 11, score at 5 1/2, and I'm going to lay this directly on top because parts of it are going to curl. So I made this layer exactly the same, knowing that I was going to like rip a little bit of it. So this also measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This is just regular Whisper White. You could use thick if you want. I also have goof this up a little bit, the Raven stamp set. So we're going to add some embossed things with that. I think I'm going to also grab, just while I have it handy, I'm going to grab the clear embossing powder as well, because you never know if we might throw some just like splattery stuff on there. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, and I have that on low, so I hope it doesn't annoy you. I'm sorry if it is annoying. I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit by kind of making this dark, but I'm going to bring in some of the Blackberry Bliss first. Okay, so I'm going to Blackberry Bliss, and I do have a sponge dauber. At one time I was really doing a great job of being organized and labeling it, but that fell apart very quickly. So I'm just going to put some Blackberry Bliss kind of all over. This probably is going to be a little bit messy, so just be warned. When you do use the sponge dauber, it gives a much more concentrated color, but it tends to be very circular. So I think we're going to be covering this up from what I'm wanting to do enough that you probably won't notice. But so I'm going to leave this here just in case I need it. So that's why I'm really not terrifically concerned with the fact that this is very circular underneath, okay? Then I'm going to, just for the heck of it, I'm going to put a little bit of Gorgeous Grape. And I'm going to do this with a sponge. So Gorgeous Grape, I just want kind of some different, like a lighter and a darker purple color. So we'll see. I'm not sure how much ink this paper is going to take. So that's just a little bit of Gorgeous Grape. Then we're going to add in some gray granite. And put that over here. I'm going to do this with a sponge. Ooh, this sponge is pretty. Now, I will tell you one thing, just as an FYI, with your sponges and your sponge daubers, if they start to get kind of frayed looking, like this one is kind of ratty looking at the end, when you start using it, if it starts shedding, you probably want to throw it away, because you don't want little bits of stuff, especially depending on what kind of a craft you're doing. Sometimes it's not going to be terrifically noticeable, but if it really starts, not like shedding, but shedding enough that it messes up your project, you may want to toss your sponge or your sponge dauber. I have some sponges that I've had probably since I started stamping, which are about 15 years ago, that I'm noticing are starting to shred when I use them. So I've kind of gotten away from using those as much. So again, this is gray granite, and I'm kind of going all over for that. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of smoky slate. And I think that sponge, I'm pretty confident that one has seen, that dauber seen its end. So I'm going to sponge in some gray granite. Again, so we do want this to be pretty dark. And regardless of how dark it looks now, I think once we put the black on, it's going to be darker. So we will see. I could be wrong, but maybe not. All right, so that's just a little bit of different grays. Now, the other thing, when they give you directions for this, so in, as a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, they will put kind of like these recipes. If you all remember, they used to put these in the back of the, book that they would give us. I feel like that's Rich Razzleberry. This is Blackberry Bliss. Good Lord. What am I talking about? Blackberry, Purple Posy. That's what it was. Forget it. I'm sorry. I'm having a brain fart here. So I did go with the dark blackberry. So they kind of give you like a recipe of what they all used, but they don't actually tell you like what they did. So I'm kind of just spreading out just some different mediums. So that was a little bit of, that was dark Blackberry Bliss, and then this is dark Purple Posy. These are just the Stampin' Blends. I'm just trying to fill in a little bit of the white. See what it looks like. So now I'm going to add in, and I think I'm going to start with the light first, because sometimes the dark black is so black you can't really see. So I'm going to go with a little bit of the light basic black Stampin' Blend and just add over top of this. So it's definitely making it a little bit darker. And I'm kind of just doing it in spots because I don't really want the black so concentrated that it overwhelms it. Because if you look at that page that they did, and again, this is the very first time I'm doing this, so I'm just hoping it turns out well. You can see that there are light and dark spots. So I'm kind of just following slightly along with what I have. Right now, this is making me a little worried that this is going to end up being a flop, but we will see. All right, so now I'm going to bring in my VersaFine. Now, one thing, let's start out with this first. We're going to start with Memento first because Memento will dry a little faster. This takes a while to dry, so I'm going to start, ooh, you see how black that got. I'm going to start with this first, and I'm actually going to grab, just because I'm going to keep it like slightly protected. I'm going to put this here just because we're using black. And we want like a different, I don't know what word to use, like a confluence of colors. I don't even know if that's the right word, but you want like lights and darks, purples. We're going to really end up overworking this paper probably. And also we're going to want to like kind of rough it up a little bit. So the fact that you can still see some of it, I'm just hoping it turns out remotely how I think it's going to. If not, we'll just cover it up with something. And see. So we finally got kind of like fall / pre-winter here in Maryland, so it's definitely much darker. You can still see the purples through, but it's definitely much darker. I will say one thing with the alcohol blends, they tend to stay kind of squiggle marked, so be careful when you color with them that you're okay with having the lines underneath. Again, by the time we're done versus what it looks like now, it might look different. Alright, so you can still see underneath of this, you have like your tones of purple, different color purples, and your black. So I'm going to put this away for now. And then I'm going to add in just a little bit of VersaFine. I'm just going to use the same sponge since it's black. This is I'm kind of just trying to cover up a little bit of the liney parts of what I did with the blends. So I should have been just a little bit more careful not to be so rigid when I was doing them. But all right, I don't want to cover too much more because I feel like it's going to lose its purple. So we're going to leave it at that. So that's going to be it for our color. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to put these here. Wipe off my hands. I'm going to hit this with the heat tool just because I want to dry it some before we add the embossing. So I'm going to crank this up for a second. Because I want to do some heat embossing, but I want to make sure it's dry. A lot of the stuff we're going to do is going to be kind of splattery, but there's a couple things where I want to make sure that it's not going to grab a whole bunch of extra stuff. And probably once you dry it, so you can see it's still white on the other side. Once we dry it, it may in fact even lighten up a little bit. You finally got fall too. Oh boy, did I snort? Yes, I am a snorter. All right, so I'm gonna leave that running. And again, your card will fold a little bit. So just as a side note, we're gonna do this now. I'm gonna kind of rip up the edge of this because it does have a couple kind of torn edges. So I'm just gonna take my bone folder and kind of work in right here. Kind of just to give this like a little, and we're gonna fool with this a little bit too. So I'm gonna do something extra to this because I thought of what I originally thought they did with the paper, they didn't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you something I think will look kind of neat. Hopefully, you can kind of just messing the edge of that up a little bit. And in case you don't know, this is on page 55. That's where I got this idea from the holiday catalog. And so this one will kind of roll back a little bit. So this one has a pretty good tear in it here. Okay. And then this one just has like a little bit of a roll. There we go. All right, so I'm going to leave it like that. So there's those two pieces. We have a tear, similar, and a roll. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is you can do this two ways. You can throw caution to the wind and not use your embossing buddy if you don't want to, if you don't really care what it looks like. Or if you want, you can use your embossing buddy. Now it is going to leave a little bit of white powder on here, so I'm going to do one area so I can kind of show you. I'm going to just do one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the feather. And I'm going to do this with clear. So instead of doing black, I'm going to do this with clear to start. So move this. Here it is. I feel like you too. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Not that that surprises me. All right, so I'm going to do a feather. Just like that. And where is it? Still, here it is. I'm going to do my clear embossing on this. Just tap it off. Give it a good flick. All right, let me close this up. And I'm going to kind of just keep this over here for now because I have a feeling I'm going to use the clear again. I'm going to crank up my heat tool. Melt this. You can see it melted really fast because it's been heating. You do want to give it a second to cool down, so it looks really neat because it's clear on black, so it's reflecting all the color underneath. So once it's cool, now what you can do is just take your dirty towel and just wipe. Oh, the power's flickering. That's never good. We got fall and now the power's flickering. So you can just wipe that off and you see there's not any white residue there anymore. You can also keep handy, just in case, a Swiffer cloth. That works really well. But I just wanted to show you can do that if you'd like. Now I'm going to do the rest of it without it. So I'll just, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to stamp. And I wanted to tell you this too. So I did stamp the little branch. And I kind of fussy cut around it. You don't have to do that though. If you don't like fussy cutting, just don't do it. It's fine. I did the same with the raven. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the Versamark. I just thought of this just this second. And I'm just going to kind of hit the tips of him, like the tips of his feathers. And like a little bit here. I'm kind of just using the edge of this. Do it over here as well. And then I'm going to just sprinkle him with clear. Not exactly sure how wispy that looks. It was my intent that it would look kind of like on the tips of his feathers, but I think I got a little overzealous on a couple of these parts. So I'm just going to kind of brush it back with my finger. All right, and then move this over again. I'm going to heat him up real quick. Oops. I'm back. Ooh, hot. So I now have melted embossing paste powder on my finger. That's a little funny. But anyway, so he's a little bit more shiny than he was. You can do this. You can also now, just because like the black spots, I'm going to kind of just pounce on him with the black that I had left over. Just to darken him up a little bit. And I'm going to show you how I stamped him. So in order to get him, what I did, and I'm going to show you what I did for the branch as well. So let me just scoot this over. Grab my little scrap here. Yeah, this is just something we did, I think, a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to show you what I did for him. So for the raven, and is that big enough? Where is my, here's my branch. I'm going to show you what I did with the branch first. For the branch, I did this on black, but I'm going to show you on white just so you can actually see what it looks like. So I stamped him with Versamark. Let me put this back because I want to do this in black so you can see. And then I dropped the black. So imagine if this is black paper. I dropped the black shimmer onto black cardstock. So it really gives a nice dark look. And then heat this up. And I fussy cut it. Again, you don't have to do this. I did not use my embossing buddy, so it's definitely not going to be crisp. Alright, but that's what I did, but I did it on black, and then I just went and kind of like went in and trimmed it, so that's one thing you could do, or you could do it on black. Now, for the raven, what I did was I went and stamped him actually in black. I did not use the VersaFine. I figured just to start, I would use the Versamark. I'm sorry, the Memento. Versamark is for embossing. But I will tell you, when you use VersaFine, and I'm going to show you the difference between these two. So you can see, you have a pretty good image. He's fairly dark, right? But if you actually use VersaFine, Stampin' Up! Does not carry VersaFine. I think I got it from Simon Says Stamp. But VersaFine is pigment ink. However, it is really, really good for fine details. So I just want to show you the difference between these two. And again, I'm not being like super cautious when I'm doing this. I'm just making sure he's inked up. Find a clear space because it's more so you can tell around the feathers and the eyes. But you get so much better detail on the feathers So you can see the difference between the two on the feathers and also on the eye. So just kind of depends. But what I did was I stamped this. I'm going to dry him off because the VersaFine ink does take a little bit to dry. And I did stamp the bird. When I stamped the raven, I stamped him on white. That way white bits would show through. And then I took my Stampin' blend. So I did, I think I started with dark purple posy. And as long as the VersaFine is dry and set, you can use this, but you do have to wait. Same with the Memento. Memento is made to use with this, but you have to be sure that it's dry. So I kind of filled in with a little bit of light, no, that was dark purple posy, and then light blackberry bliss. And I kind of just moved around like as if feathers would be. So kind of like tried to stroke it in so I wouldn't get those lines. Because when you color over black, you can still see the lines a little bit. And then I brought in some, I think I used light blackberry bliss. That's dark. Let me try this one. Yeah, I did end up using dark blackberry bliss. I did leave a little bit of white kind of for contrast. So you're touching very lightly, so it's kind of like as if it were feathers, like a feather touch, so you're not being very heavy-handed. I'm definitely using the brush tip end, so it's a little bit wispier. But all I did was basically colored him in, left a little bit of the white there. But you can definitely see, you get much more definition with the VersaFine ink. So then you would just do the same thing, just kind of feather touch when you bring it in. So just kind of depends on what you have on hand. And then I did fussy cut around the bird, which was not terrifically exhausting, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But what I did, where is he? Lost my bird, here he is I kind of went in with my paper snips, and I just kind of almost made my own feathers. So I like snipped in where I thought they were and then snipped to the other side. So it actually ended up being a little, not too difficult. And then I traced the edge like I usually do to get rid of the white line. I traced it with my black marker. And then I filled in between his feet because I was afraid if I cut in between them that it would be really flimsy. So I just filled that in with the light basic black and probably a little bit of smoky slate as well. So there is how I did that, and then how I did the branch, because I figured I kind of wanted him to like sit on the branch how they had in the picture. So there's those two. But now what we're going to do is just go back to finishing up the rest of this. So let me do a couple things. Other thing you can do as well, so you could do this one of two ways. A long time ago, I got a Versa marker. So it's like Versamark, but in a pen. So you can actually make like little dots of stuff. And you could make like zigzags. It's pretty neat because you can do, and then it also has a different tip. It has a very fine tip as well. So you could make lightning bolts or stuff like that. So you could do that if you happen to have this. If you don't, what you could do is you could get a little bit of Versamark and use a blender pen. So you could kind of put a dot of this on a clear block, dip a blender pen in it, and make a little bit of mark to kind of follow it, because this isn't going to stay wet long enough. And then what you'll do is take your black shimmer powder, and I'm kind of just spreading this all over, hoping it's going to stick to some of the spots that are, again, remember I did not use the embossing buddy, so it's going to have some big open spaces. So I'm going to just heat these up. I think Stampin' Up! Did used to have a lot of the things that I have. I think they're just, obviously I've done this for quite a long time, so some of the stuff is just old, is the nicest way to put it. Alright, so I'm going to keep, I still have that on because I want to add some clear. So I kind of just heated this to set it, so it kind of gives just a little bit of different visual interest. So now we're going to add just a couple more things, and then we're going to finish up that one part so I could show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to leave this here. I have my clear here as well. Let me move these over since we're finished with them. Okay. So I'm going to add in a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and just stamp the branch, and I want to clean this off first because I have like 2 blocks that are reachable without knocking things over. So I'm going to take the raven off. I'm going to add the branch back in again, and I'm just going to stamp that in a couple different spots. And you could also, at this point, if you wanted to add like any of the other Halloween stuff that we have that's kind of backgroundy, you could totally do that. What I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do this with Versamark. And I'm going to ink this up again. And I'm going to do it with clear this time. So I'm going to just kind of bring a branch over here. Put one up top. So that'll be those 2. And then I have just a couple more things before we finish this. Because one other thing I want to show you that's kind of, I hope it's going to turn out neat. I don't know. I have an idea in my head, but... Alright, so let's do that. Oop, got a little bit of black in there, so it's not going to be quite as clear. So maybe if you're using black embossing powder, you want to have a separate catcher. If you also might be using clear. So the good part about this is, even though we have multiple layers of different type of embossing powder, if your heat tool is really hot, it's just going to heat them back up and they'll go right back where they were. You can definitely see much more of the purple in here as well. So that's really neat. All right, so now my other idea was, and I have to grab one more thing that I forgot to get out. So to me, it kind of looked like they had this done on silver foil. So I thought, just was thinking at the moment, what would be cool is, how about if we take, so I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to put marker on here. And marker on here. All right, let me put the cap on this. And I'm going to dump a little bit of silver. On both ends of this. And then I'm going to heat this. And then I think we should be done with the embossing. I'm hoping this was enough that we'll be able to notice it. Okay, so I kind of just did like the little edges of that, so it just looks like a little bit silvery. So I think it looks kind of neat. All right, so what we're going to do, where is my actual half piece that I already had scored? Here it is. So this is going to go onto the base, but that's black walnuts falling onto the pool cover in case you heard that crazy noise. I'm going to take this is just a little piece of paper. We could trim this, but just to save on time, I'm not going to. I'm going to kind of tear it so it looks torn, and I'm going to sponge it just a little bit just to get rid of the bright white. So there's for one, and then for this one, I'll just rip this side. You do kind of, if you're going to want this to look rough, you want to tear towards you versus down, because if you tear up, you'll get that white edge. If you tear down, you won't. You can always flip it over, but this is a little too orangey. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of eyeball where we want these. And this could even stick out a little bit if you wanted to. So we're going to put this here. And then this one here. So I'm just going to grab my liquid glue and kind of eyeball where I'm going to put these. I just made another video right before this where I was talking about how my liquid glue is so empty that I should get new ones out, and guess what? Still didn't. All right, let me make sure these line up okay before I'm going to move this up just a little. And even though this sticks out a little bit, I'm going to leave it stick out because I think it looks kind of neat. Looks pretty roughed up. So that is going to go there. Now all I have to do is I have my branch. Again, when I did this, if you want to trim it, you can kind of just nip along the edge on little pieces. Mine looks a little bit more wicked than probably what the actual stamp looks like because I did not trim very close to it, but that's the reason I also did it on black. That way I wouldn't have anything that I had to like color in if I felt like I needed to. So we have that. I have to figure out where exactly I want to put this. I might have to put it over a little bit. We have our raven here. The other thing we're going to add is they did theirs with, oh, and I just realized I did this upside down because I wanted this to be at the bottom. There we go. That was just me putting it on there upside down. Okay, it still works. So they put their sentiment on the top in crumb cake. So we'll do that just to kind of stick with the theme of it. So you just need a little piece of either crumb cake, or you could use Sahara sand if you wanted to, but it kind of will match this a little bit better. So I'm going to just snip this for the sake of being quick. And I'm going to say celebrate if you dare. And we'll do this in, we'll do it in crumb cake. No, you know what? I'm going to do it in black. We'll do it in black. So I'm just going to do memento. After doing all that sponging, I think my memento needs to be inked up a little bit. So, oh, that's crooked. Let's try that again. Oh, for heaven's sake. Okay, that's going to have to be good enough. This is still crooked. Yeah, just a little bit. That's because the paper's crooked. I'm gonna see if I can straighten it up just slightly. You know what? It's a Halloween card. It's supposed to be crooked, right? So I'm gonna just rip this off again. Just kind of give it that like torn up Halloween look. And just like that. All right, we're gonna put this up here at the top. You could totally, if you wanted to, you could staple this. That way it's got more texture to it as well. One other thing is I want to put this together because the final touches, what I'm going to put on, I'm not going to be able to move it after that because I want to add some extra stuff to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put, let me grab a real one, this on the top. Oh, real quick. Since I have my black here, I'm just going to sponge. Just a little bit. There's not a whole lot of ink on here. It's pretty much dried at this point because, you know, the memento does dry a little bit faster. So that way it'll kind of stick with the blackish look to it. Very, like, dark. Like that. And I'm putting this just up at the top. If you wanted to, you could still add, like, a little bit of, like a staple to it or something. Another thing you could do if you felt like it, and maybe you have the patience for this, you could add like a stitch to hold this back. So like stitch over it if you have sewing stuff that you use for that. What I'm going to do in lieu of that is I'm going to grab a mini dimensional and I'm going to, I might actually cut this in half. So I have a mini dimensional and I'm putting this here on the edge of that embossing part and I'm kind of pushing it down to hold it back. So you could do it with that. In the book it does have a little, it kind of looks like they took a piece of the metallic thread and they're just pressing that back. So just so those two pieces kind of stay peeled back. So that's really what I did for those. All right, and then I'm going to put this on with liquid glue. Let me move this so I can see. I have a Versa spot as well. I don't know where I got it from now that I think of it. I think it came with a kit a long time ago. And somebody probably said to me, I have all this Stampin' Up stuff that's really old. Would you want it? Because it is, I've never seen one aside from that. So this lines up exactly to fit the front. So it's layering perfectly over top. And then again, remember I said we had these pieces that were sticking out. So I'm going to leave those there. If you want to trim them, you can. You could also like put a little bit of glue under here to kind of keep this roll back if you felt like that's what you wanted to do. Him, I'm going to pop up with black dimensionals, but I'm going to put the branch on just again with liquid glue. That way I can kind of move it depending on where I need it. Let's see what it looks like. I'm going to try to keep the whole thing on. I think this would make a really neat scrapbook page though, but again, kind of what this started out looking like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it made me look a little nervous that I thought, well, this is going to be one of those ones where you can't always have everything good. Sometimes they're going to bomb. So I really did think this was going to be a bomb. That I've had those occasionally where I've made a card. It's been a while since it's happened, so I think I must be due for one where you make it and you're like, oh, that was not what I thought it was going to look like. And then I also, I'm going to add just the black dimensionals to this. That way it kind of stays with that dark look. I'm going to put a little tiny one. So we have the minis and the black. These come in the same pack, so that's pretty nice. You don't have to worry about having two different packs. Put one more down here. So I also, my niece takes her Taekwondo belt test tonight. So I made her a video, or a card I should say, and I was trying to find a video for how to make, I can't even think of what it is that they wear. I keep wanting to say a gi, but I don't think that's it. I could be wrong. So I just made a video. I have to finish uploading that. But I thought just in case somebody else was looking for one. So I'm going to kind of put my raven, and again I did add a tiny bit of white with the white gel pen, and then I went in with this black Pilot envelope addressing pen and added the dot to his eye because I kind of thought it got a little bit lost there. So I have that. Now last thing we're going to do, and this is kind of up to you, so you can make this, obviously if you're going to do the inside of this card, you want to add a white panel, and there's lots of other great sentiments you could add to the inside as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the shimmery crystal effects. I'm just going to put like some drops of this randomly and let it dry. But I'm also going to add in some sequins and some other little, I thought I had some other, why aren't you coming out? Some other little doodads that were dark. You got to squeeze this down to the bottom. It doesn't get stuck like the other one did and clog up your tube, so that's one good thing about it, because that other one annoyed me to no end. You kept having to cut the tip off, and then the next thing you know, it was like so big you couldn't control it. So this will end up drying like a shimmery dry, but also it does take a little bit to dry. So what I'm going to do with the ones that are still a little wet is I'm going to add a few little things to it, and then that will finish up this card. So we have, these I did not put away because I knew if I put these in that little box, it would be a nightmare. But we have these metallic assortment of sequins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of these, and I'm going to mainly stick with the black or the silver. And I'm going to pop these around and just kind of press them down. See, I'll put in a silver if I can get one to come. Come on. There was a couple other things that they said that they used too, but I cannot remember what the heck they were right now because we have lots of like little sparkly things you could add. There we go. All right, so got lots of sparkle for that. I want to see if the one other thing, if I can see what it said. It also kind of looks like they did a little bit, if you look on this one, like a little bit of a splatter effect. So if you all remember, you also can, if you have the library clips, you can also use, I want to show you this, you can use your black Stampin' Blend to color it black, because that is not, we don't sell black ones. They actually colored it black. And then you kind of leave part of it so it looks a little bit rough, but then you can heat set it with your heat tool as well. But they also did a little bit of a splatter effect. Now I did order the gouache. It's like a paint that you can make like a splattery look with, but it didn't come in yet. And when I did the craft white, it dried up a little bit light, so I don't want to do it yet. If you did that, I would definitely suggest doing it before you add the raven, because you want it to be on the background, not on the foreground. So I would keep it that way if that's what you're going to do. It is going to take a little bit for all this crystal effect, etc. stuff to dry. One other thing you could do too if you wanted to, and I can't think of, like this one when I did it, I added, I think this is black paint. And I can't tell if I put shimmer in this or not, but I'm going to just test it and see what it looks like. Because you could also... that one I think I just did black. So I think this one needs some shimmer. So since I have this, and since it's black, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a little bit of the silver, the Champagne Mist drop into this, and then I'm just going to kind of spritz the whole thing. So this was alcohol, and I think it had like a drop of black re-inker in it. Oopsie, that was a little too much. Alright, so then what you do is you're just going to put your cap on, and I'll put the cap on this so I don't make a humongous mess. Okay, so put your cap on this, and you just want to give it a really good shake. Mix it all together, and you can see when you look at it, you can tell it's sparkly because it definitely moves very fluidly in there. So I'm going to open this up and just give this whole thing a spritz. I want to make sure this is... So I'll kind of give it a shine, and the alcohol will dry very quickly. So it looks really wet now, but it's going to dry very quickly. So it will have like a really, really good shine if you give it a second. You can totally see how shiny that is. So it looks really, really like cobwebby and neat. So you could also, if you wanted to, take your crystal effects and put like a little bit of something onto the raven instead of doing the embossing like we did. But I think this turned out, considering how it started, and I honestly thought it was going to be a flop, this turned out pretty cool. And like, again, if you wanted to, you could trim off the end of this if you don't want your little pieces of paper showing through. I think this would make a super, super fun layout for a Halloween scrapbook page if you need one. One of my stampers that comes to Stamp Club, she actually does make scrapbooks like all the time. She still does lots of scrapbooks, and I thought this would be really, really, really cool to be able to use for that. So this was a fun stamp set, and this was one that when I first got it, I honestly, when I saw this, I loved the branch. I thought it was neat. I do wish it had some sort of a cutout, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. But when I saw this, I thought, I have to make this. So, again, you could also use, I feel like they used some flat sequins. I'm going to just pop in here real quick because I think it was, oh, you know what? I remember now what it was. They used the snowflakes, believe it or not. So, where are... That was the thing I thought was unusual. They used some of the circles. So I'm going to just grab a few of these. These are the snowflake sequins. But when you look in here, there are some that are snowflake shaped, and then there are some that are just little teeny circles. So I'm going to grab a couple of these out and add it to those little crystal effect spots that are still. And I'm going to even do a white one. I was like, I knew there was something else, but I just couldn't remember. There's a circle. What it was. And there's a silver one. We'll put one over here. So, another use for something else that you may or may not have thought to put into a Halloween project was the snowflake sequins, because they have a lot of different shape choices on there. So that is the completely finished card. Again, it is going to take a little bit for this crystal effect stuff to dry, so I'm gonna have to sit this down, but you can see it has a lot of shimmer to it. Again, what I'll do is I will finish the inside. What I'll probably do is just put a white panel, sponge it, and then do the sentiment and add it, because I don't want to fool with this with opening it and if it gets smudged. That is like the story of my life. I use Crystal Effects and it somehow ends up with my fingerprint in it because I never wait long enough because I added on at the wrong time. So at least today I added it at the correct time. But let me clean this up, move this all out of the way so you guys can see this card. I'm actually going to put this so it's just a little bit higher. I'll put this up on some stamp pads so you can see it. But it's really, really cool. Just little scraps of paper we used for the underneath, and the same for the sentiment up top when we added there. You could, I think it looks really neat with the crumb cake since this has crumb cake in it, but you could also use basic gray, or I wouldn't use necessarily smoky slate because I think that's a little bit too light, but you could use gray granite as well. But I think the basic gray would be another great color to add in there. So thank you guys so much for watching and for joining me all the times this week on all the different places that I've been. I will do a full scrapbook page with this on my YouTube channel. So if you don't follow me there, I would love for you to follow me there. I try to do different things. I do always take the Facebook Lives and post them to YouTube, but if for some reason you haven't seen anything new, I have been doing live streams on YouTube as well, and I do load different videos that I don't put on Facebook. So it's worth a follow. I do try to give original content on much of the things. That way you don't see the same thing on everything. You can also find me on Instagram and Pinterest. Everywhere you will find me as Rach the Stamper. And I always post all of my projects to my blog, which is rachthestamper.com. I would truly appreciate, I'll scoot this into view, so in case you have something you need to buy, there's a great host code there. I would appreciate your support. This is my full-time job, so if you have anything that you need to get, I would love it if you would purchase it for me if you don't already have a demonstrator. Thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back again next week. Take care.